Yellow.
Yo, QG, you ready to do this?
I just need a few minutes to get ready. I just got home.
Just now? Dude, where the hell were you?
Well, I was at the DNR. I was gonna look into a hunting license, but I wasn't quite sure what category dragons fell under.
Say what?
I was curious, okay? In recent years, Monster Hunter has grown from a series that many Americans didn't quite get to a worldwide hit and one of Capcom's most popular series. Hell, the recent Monster Hunter World is the company's fastest-selling title ever.
Nowadays, Monster Hunter has become immensely popular in the West, but many players remain unaware of just how brutal the older installments of the series were. If it wasn't for the game mechanics at the time, it was certainly by the monsters themselves. My experience dates back to the first Monster Hunter game on the PS2 in 2004, and needless to say that I've seen my fair share of screaming at a game that was considered the Dark Souls before Dark Souls was a thing.
Yeah, it's no surprise that Monster Hunter has an acquired taste, and sometimes that taste can be pretty salty. Even today, with all the awesome monsters the series provides, there are also plenty that are either boring, annoying, or someone please kill me now! So Regnilla and I are gonna tear into the 10 that piss us off the most. This is coming from our combined experiences with the series, so we've got plenty of virtual scars to show. While we weren't excluding Monster Hunter World specifically, none of the monsters introduced in said game were quite bad enough for this list. Though a couple did come close, they were nothing compared to these eldritch abominations. You'd better stock up on potions and antidotes and have a good meal in the canteen. This ain't gonna be pretty. Lead the way, partner.
It's going to be a rough journey through today's countdown, so you better strap your ass in for the ride.
Consider my ass strapped. It's game time! So starting off this horror fest is a monster that could be considered the OG horror movie villain of the franchise. Players of the original game might remember the swamp, which seems like a place where stabbings could happen. So it shouldn't be surprising that we have a monster that likes to go stabby stab with a giant beak.
The Gypceros, or the rubber chicken as I call it, is a bird wyvern that closely resembles the appearance and fighting style as a Yian Garuga, only with a sturdy rubber hide and a flashlight in its head. That said though, it's not as simple as taking on a fatter Garuga, as it spits out a generous dose of poison when you try to smack it in the face.
Just like it is in any game, poison can be a serious annoyance unless you have armor that resists it, or a full stock of antidotes. But if you keep a safe distance, that won't be the big issue here. That flashlight on its head, on the other hand, will be the reason you want to smack it in the face in the first place. When you hear the clack of that hammer crest, you'd better do something, or you will likely end up blinded and stunned.
Getting stunned in the world of Monster Hunter is truly one of the worst things that can happen to you. In the older games, you would need to mash buttons to get rid of the stun element, but that wouldn't do you much good when the other smaller monsters around you want a piece of that sexy hunter ass, namely the Bofangos.
And while it does borrow some of its physical attacks from the Khezu, two of its attacks can be pretty annoying as well. When a Khezu pecks at you, the worst that can happen is simple damage. The Gypceros, however, can be a real peck pocket. And then there's its rubber dick tail, which has more range than it looks like. And as if it weren't enough of a troll, when it takes enough damage, it tries to play dead. Which, to be honest, isn't exactly effective, especially when it's the main target in a quest.
The reason that we have the Gypceros so low on this list is that while it is a troll and not a whole lot of fun to fight, it's still a lower level large monster with a maliciously exploitable weak point. It mainly just serves as a test of patience to those that thought the Yian Garuga wasn't stupid enough.
Monster Hunter Generations was essentially a greatest hits of the franchise. Many of the hunting areas were revamped versions of areas from previous games, villages from previous games made a comeback, and of course, a multitude of monsters made a comeback to get beat down from your brand spanking new styles and hunter arts.
Among the newcomers in Generations, we have the Fated Four, which all have their own elemental abilities to beat you down with. The most notable of the Fated 4 is the Glavenus, which is what you get when you stitch a greatsword to a monster's tail and give it PCP strength. But it doesn't stop there with the Glavenus, nor does it hurt any less.
Another reason that the Glavenus is the most irritating of the Fated 4 to fight is because it's faster than a T-Rex on steroids has any right to be. Many times when a brute wyvern shows any signs of speed, it's usually in a short burst. In the case of the Glavenus, it will chase you down from the other side of the arena like Usain fucking Bolt. And we haven't gotten into talking about that greatsword tail yet.
The tail on the Glavenus is not just in the shape of a greatsword, but the tail is the same size as a Deviljho's and moves at the speed of a longsword. That's bulk, length, and speed working against you.
And not only will it cut you up like a butcher to a fine cut of meat, it'll do its damnedest to roast you well done. Not only does it have fire breath, but it can even launch fireballs from that tail, which means if you're anywhere near it and you aren't protecting yourself, you're going to be putting your grade school lessons to good use. And another thing about that tail, it can only be cut off when it's red hot and glowing, which leads to the biggest ace of its non-existent sleeves.
You may notice during a Glavenus fight that it will bite down on its tail and start making a loud grinding sound. Now, if your head is on a swivel and expect bad things to happen, then you would rightfully be as far back from the monster as you possibly can. If you're not paying attention, then you will be sent flying by a super powerful tail attack that would cut any normal person in half. It's like pulling back on a tree branch and letting it go so it can hit your friend. Only the branch has a knife duct taped to it.
And when we say as far back as possible, we mean it. That attack has disgusting range. And special mention to the Hellblade Glavenus, a living kiln whose throat and tail are always at maximum temperature. Give me any other of the Fated 4 over this. The Gamma-Size in bulk, the Astalos in its lightning speed, the Misutsuni in its bubbles.
Next monster on the countdown is the Congalala, a second generation monster and one voted most likely to still smell rancid even after a 10-day bath in the ocean.
While the other monsters are here on this shit show due to being annoying or frustrating, this thing is here because it's too stupid to take seriously even when you're supposed to. Seriously, this is supposed to be a threat? It's more like a vulgar stand-up routine than anything else.
By vulgar stand-up routine, he means that the only people that would find the Congalala funny are the 12-year-olds laughing at fart jokes, which conveniently explains most of the Congalala's attacks. In addition to attacks that would either leave the monster out of breath or make it twice as fat, it has a nasty habit of throwing poo and launching explosive farts, with a really nasty side effect.
Both of these attacks can cause the rare soiled status, which is another of the nastiest things that can happen to you. When you're tainted by the stench, nearly all of your items are too rotten to consume. The only cure is to wait out the stink or to throw down a deodorant. How one deodorant is enough to cure a stink like that is beyond me.
And just because you know how to stay away from the sphincter of this monster doesn't mean you're home free from the nasty business. The mushroom that's often seen wrapped in the Congalala's tail isn't just for show, but rather it's a useful tool for the giant pink monkey to use against you. By consuming one of several varieties of mushroom, the Congalala gains a breath attack that contains just about every status ailment including, you guessed it, more soiled status.
And then there's its subspecies, the Emerald Congalala. For one thing, it's more powerful and aggressive than its base counterpart. A G-rank one of these things can do as much as 70% damage or more to a hunter in G-rank armor in one swipe. Also, it can store more gas than Big Ol' Pinky, which means that in rage mode, most of its attacks end in, yup, more farting. It even has a super fart which could send you skyward if it connects. It's like a bad episode of South Park. I feel filthy just thinking about it.
Yo! Where you going? We're in the middle of a video!
I'm gonna take a shower, I'll be right back! Hello? A little privacy, please? There, much better. So, what's next? Why do I get the feeling that my shower was just wasted?
Yian Garuga.
You mean the bastard love child of the Rathian and the Yan Kutku? Yare yare. Time to dig into the antidotes again.
Don't kid yourself. You're gonna run out.
Oh boy, now the piss is starting to come to a simmer. If you thought that the Yan Kutku was stupid, its bully of a cousin is gonna come knocking. By which I mean directly on your skull. And let me tell ya, this ain't no light tapper, buddy. It's a fucking battering ram.
Take everything you know about a Yian Kutku, then throw most of its attacks out the window, replace some of its attacks with a Rathian, and then make it listen to 3 Days Grace for 5 years. That's basically what you're looking at with the Yian Garuga. It has a nasty temper, but the front of the monster is not the thing you should be worried about. It's that godforsaken tail.
Just like the Rathian, this punk's tail is venomous, and boy howdy does it know how to use it. Backflips, helicopter spins, the works. And if it so much as scratches you, it's back to the antidote bag for another round, and considering how often it puts that tail to task, you may end up with a chemical dependency by the time you're done.
But just when you think you've avoided a decent tail swipe, it's not over. You may need to worry less about the monster's head, but that still doesn't mean it can be ignored. Along with a single and triple fireball attack that would certainly turn on any nearby Rathian, it also has a roar that can leave you stunned if you don't have the earplug skill. Combined with its propensity to go into rage mode and that tail, the Garuga can land hit after hit before you realize what the fuck.
And unlike its doofy cousin, the Garuga is immune to sonic bombs, which you think would be effective against it since it shares the same trait of big ears. Thing is, it's managed to adapt because its roar is basically the same effect. Natural selection can be a bitch sometimes.
If that's the case, then we just may need to wait for natural selection to turn us into Super Saiyans. Until then, however, we need to deal with this hellspawn the same way we would with any monster. Cut it into pieces like the little psychopath you are. And with a multitude of breakable parts on the Yian Garuga, it's oddly cathartic once one part breaks after another.
The monsters giveth as the monsters taketh away. So it is written in the Bible of Monster Hunter. Jeez, and I thought summers in Arizona and California were bad enough. Isn't that right, buddy?
Arizona may be hot all year round and California's on fire every 6 months, but that doesn't mean a damn thing to a monster that can take a casual stroll through lava. Ever had a day where it was hotter than hell and you had to do some kind of physical labor outside? Ever feel like your strength was being sapped and you just didn't feel like moving? Now picture yourself at the base of an active volcano and you're tasked with digging your weapon into a monster with skin that is quite literally made out of rock. Making you sweat yet? Because now it's time for the Gravios.
I swear, if jumping attacks weren't so effective at cutting into this thing, it would have taken me twice as long to kill it the first time I fought it. That's because, save for a few weak points, only the sharpest of blades will be able to saw through that bony carapace normally. Everything else will just bounce off. I hate to think of the hunters that had to face this thing back in the early days. Yeah, I was spoiled with jumping and mounting and all that newfangled crap.
Gravios is a first-generation monster and the adult form of the Plesioth, and much like the adult counterpart, fighting this juvenile delinquent is like pulling teeth. The Gravios sports many attacks similar to the Plesioth, but instead of it being able to poison hunters, it can put hunters to sleep when not in rage mode. And believe me, you don't want to be caught napping around this tank for any reason, especially when it has firepower to match.
Yep, unlike its troublesome youngster counterpart, the Gravios packs literal heat in the form of the goddamn lava laser. When you hear the roar that indicates that it's coming, find cover. That thing does serious damage, and even if you have high enough guard skill to block it, you'll still get chipped like a rotten tooth. Oh, and it has 2 ways of firing it.
There's really no easy way of fighting a Gravios. At long range, it will fire its lava beams, and at short range, it can still unleash fire plumes from its stomach in a similar fashion to the sleep gas. But that's not all. If you call in the next 10 minutes, the Gravios will also add in a body slam attack complete with a wide earthquake effect, doing some considerable damage to nearby attackers.
And if you subscribe to the Gravios channel right now, we'll throw in the Black Gravios at no extra charge. This damage sponge comes with 20% more lava lasers and 50% extra aggression. Guaranteed to frustrate you within one hunt or you're... Actually, no, just guaranteed to frustrate you.
There's only 2 things that could maybe make a Gravios hunt less irritating. The stomach can be broken twice, leaving the internal muscle exposed like a burst callus and allowing a ton of damage to be dealt. The drawback is that you need to be close to the behemoth. The other thing is that blunt weapons work better on the Gravios, but it also requires you to get close to its face. And we all know what comes out of that thing.
When the phrase Elder Dragons is mentioned, images often come to mind of majestic beasts of incredible size and power. Behemoths that disturb the very fabric of nature. Titans that transcend human comprehension. Beings of unparalleled disaster. And yeah, some of the greatest monsters in the series are part of this exclusive club. Nergigante, Shagaru Magala, Gogmazios, Fatalis.
When the Kirin is mentioned, however, 2 things come to mind. A, it's not an Elder Dragon, and B, it needs to go right back to My Little Pony where it belongs. To this I say, an Elder Dragon is a category of monster that does not fit any current classification of monster. And when the Kirin's involved, friendship is not on this monster's to-do list, but magical fucking lightning is, and it is out to kill you. Consider this revenge for all the innocent Kelby you brutally slaughtered for horns, as the Kirin is their god and revenge will be dealt by its horn.
While it does earn some points for its majestic appearance and that it does bear a good resemblance to its mythological namesake, that still doesn't change how aggravating it is to keep up with this beast, let alone fight it. Bearing an equine frame comes with all the running speed thereof, meaning it will dart around the hunting area like it's running the fucking Kentucky Derby, and when it's running fast, it can run you over fast.
Speed and a small frame isn't the only thing the Kirin has going for it. The lightning it wields. Jesus Christ, that lightning. It's the Kirin's best offensive weapon, as not only it can be chained for some pretty nasty combos, but also because of the fact that it's lightning. You need to have great reaction time to avoid getting badly hurt. And because I'm a guy that's really easily distracted by shiny objects, as soon as I see the reflection of the lightning on the ground, odds are I'm rolling into the lightning instead of away from it.
And not only is that lightning an offensive threat, it's just as effective as a defensive threat as well. Its scales, yes, scales, not coat, are hard enough as it is, but the Kirin also has a special armored mode where it charges up with thunder power. Remember that thunder armor scene from the Pokemon anime? Imagine that on a thunder-powered unicorn with dragon scales. When that armor is up, virtually nothing will be able to scratch it save for its head. When that happens, you'll want to stay the fuck away until it wears off.
So let's do a rundown of what exactly we're dealing with here. The smallest of large monsters with Elder Dragon status sporting high mobility, health, great offensive and defensive abilities at both long and short range, and a small weak point on its head. Yeah, newbie hunters beware. Or not, your funeral from this tiny unicorn from hell.
I don't even think bronies would like this thing. Oh yeah, almost forgot. An arc-tempered version of this was recently added to Monster Hunter World and...
Yeah, that didn't work.
Oh
Regretting having
shit.
me move-
Oh shit!
yeah. You know, there are a few things funnier in multiplayer gaming than getting overly greedy and accidentally causing your friend to have a drunken freakout.
Okay, don't do anything. Don't do anything! Oh! Ah, fuck you!
God. I need to drink more. Also, fuck the Diablos.
The Diablos is one of the best examples of a badass design being completely overshadowed by a maddening fight. If the idea of a horned dinosaur with wings and a mace for a tail sounds scary, you'd have no idea how right you are, because this freak of the desert will not let up on you once it has you in its sights. So unless you have a powered-up shield or you've been training under a Bridge Series Piccolo, you're in for trouble.
The Diablos has no special beams or powers to speak of, unless you count the unique skill of digging. So what? Ed could dig holes too. What the Diablos does have is an anger management problem that would put my teenage self to shame. And bear in mind, this is when the Diablos is in its normal state.
With no elemental powers to speak of, the Diablos relies on its significant physical strength to mow you down, from charging you with its giant-ass horns, to smacking you with the mace tail, to popping up from underground like a mutated Diglett. And the tail and face can be difficult to swipe at, given the giant hitboxes of the horns and the speed, power, and height of the tail. But things get even worse when the Diablos really gets angry. You won't like it when it's angry. Monsters can typically go into a rage mode when dealt enough damage or with enough fatigue, which we brought up before. The Diablos, on the other hand, may as well be Bruce Banner with extra gamma rays, because it enters rage mode almost whenever it wants.
When the Diablos gets angry, it acts like it got a steroid and Red Bull enema. This means you better be light on your toes or else your ass is getting mowed over. Another thing to look out for with the Diablos is its ear-piercing roar, which requires high-grade earplugs to block, and it also attracts death metal bands at a distance of about 25 miles or so.
And when it's in rage mode, it won't show signs of weakness like limping, meaning unless you have the proper skill or a high enough research level in World, you'll have trouble knowing when it's ready for capture. So, do you run around like a wayward outfielder to wait out the rage, or do you just kill it and end the fight? Either way, pick your poison. And that's not even counting the Black Diablos, a female subspecies that's literally horny on main. This bitch is even more aggressive than its male counterpart, meaning you're really gonna have to be on point or you'll be on her points in no time. God help you if it's mating season.
And guys, take it from me. There's nothing more challenging and more exhausting for a man out there than having to deal with a female that wants a lot of sex.
You've had to deal with that? That actually sounds terrifying.
Turns out I didn't like getting laid nearly as much as I thought I did.
Oh no. Another horror movie monster!
You alright over there? Got some monster PTSD?
First Jason and now Leatherface. It's not even Halloween, come on! Oh man, if the piss was at a simmer before, now it's come to a rolling fucking boil. And stirring the pot here is everyone's least favorite sack of flabby shit. If you want a monster that runs contrary to nearly everything that makes monsters great, the Khezu is the monster to do it. One of the most universally hated monsters in the whole franchise, this thing provides almost no sense of excitement.
People have called the Giganox horrifying or troublesome, and, well, they're not necessarily wrong, but the Khezu is on a whole nother level. A cousin of the Nox, the Khezu is a first-generation monster that is totally blind and hunts by way of smell. The game even acknowledges this by the total absence of music during the fight. Hell, there isn't even a monster icon that typically accompanies a large monster fight. This might not mean much at first glance, but it makes a world of difference on how your hunter behaves in combat.
You see, when a monster normally spots you, your hunter behaves differently from when he or she is trying to track it down. For example, the running animation is different when you're trying to run from a monster that has you in its sights, and when an attack approaches you and you hit the dodge button with just the right timing, you do your best impression of Superman to get out of the way. But since the Khezu can't see you, you have your normal run and you lose your Kryptonian acting abilities. This hurts you more than you think, given the Khezu's abilities.
The Khezu's greatest weapon is its ability to wield electricity generated from its body. This might not seem like much since the Khezu's attacks are pretty easy to read, but underestimating the devastation of a Khezu's thunder attack will quickly make you fail the quest. There are two main ways that the Khezu uses its attacks: an electric field that will quickly send you flying, and a breath attack that will guarantee to paralyze you if you get touched by it.
Not to mention that in its Return in 4 Ultimate, it gets even worse, thanks to the addition of the elemental blights the generation before. In the Khezu's case, that means Thunder Blight, which increases your chances of getting stunned. Combine that with the attacks that can cause paralysis, and you have a recipe for the ultimate death sentence in Monster Hunter: Stunlock.
Under normal circumstances, you could quickly recover from a Khezu's electric field attack, even after being stunned. But once the Khezu gets into rage mode, it will make you go into rage mode with how quickly it can combo you with attacks. In addition to its two main thunder attacks, the Khezu can use its electric field attack while jumping for extra damage, and will even use it while casually walking forward. To add injury to, well, injury, that neck doesn't just look like a dick, it also stretches like a dick, effectively making the Khezu an even bigger dick.
And that's even before it decides to troll you by climbing on the walls and ceilings. Even with 4U's ability to knife at monsters on the walls, it's hell trying to get this bastard down. And of course, it has a subspecies. The red Khezu has even stronger electrical attacks and a new attack with its dick neck. I think I'll take my chances on the escaped psychos. Monster Hunter Tri was the first game in the series to introduce underwater combat. Unsurprisingly, Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate was the last game in the series to feature underwater combat. Granted, they could have done some fine-tuning with the underwater controls, but all the tweaking and adjusting in the world couldn't fix the biggest issue with underwater combat. At its core, the idea was fundamentally flawed because aquatic monsters had a huge mobility advantage in their home element, and the Plesioth... Regnilla, dude, where are you going?
Getting my sword! You have no idea how much of a pain in the ass this one is. I still have PTSD from it from Freedom Unite.
Yeah, I can't blame my partner for having war flashbacks of the Plesioth. This thing is the poster boy for horrible water monsters. Whether you're fighting on land or underwater, you will not have a fun time with this thing. This disgusting chicken-fish-wyvern hybrid is a pain from start to finish, from its movements to its attacks. For starters, because of its long legs, it can be a pain to reach its main body with many melee weapons, meaning you're typically stuck slashing at its legs unless you manage to knock it over. The only other times it lowers its main body are to slither at you like a cobra on crack, or start flopping around on the shore like, well, a fish out of water. It also has the most annoying hip check of any monster in the series, and it will spam the fuck out of this attack. Underwater, it's a pain because its agility far outpaces anything you can muster, meaning it can swim at you from across the freaking area, smack you around like a bitch, and swim to the other side all in one smooth motion, where you have to put yourself in the danger zone just to hit the bastard unless you have a ranged weapon. And on top of that, there's another attack that it spams underwater, because its high-pressure water cannon breath is bad news on this thing. With the prerequisite range of other similar attacks, and its propensity to bust it out whenever it wants, and your lack of mobility underwater, this attack will make you wish you weren't so damn sluggish underwater.
Hey, at least you can actually fight the damn thing underwater in 3 Ultimate. Let me give you kids a little history on the Plesioth, one filled with the nightmarish screams of all of whom that have fought, died, and raged against this monstrosity. Originally from the first generation, the Plesioth could only be found in one area on the desert map. It was found in a cave that was cold as balls and would sap your stamina meter if you didn't use a hot drink. The Plesioth was typically out of reach, and it would not come out of the water unless it felt like it or you tried to provoke it out with a sonic bomb, which only made the beast angry. And let's say the Plesioth emerges from its freezing depths. The attacks that it has out of the water have remained largely unchanged. So guess what? Hip checks for everybody. But again, let's say that you got a few good hits in with your then limited selection of weapons. At any time, the Plesioth could hop right back into the water where you can't reach it. The only thing that can prevent these sort of moments from dragging on is by fishing it out of the water with a frog for some goddamn reason. Then we get to Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. And holy shit. As much as I love the game, one massive complaint I will always have about it is how disgustingly broken every single hitbox was. And no hitbox was more broken than the Plesioth and its hip check that can level a 4-story building. You think it's bad now? You have no idea how good you new gen hunters have it. The hitbox for the Plesioth's hip check was so broken that you could be out of range and still be hit, near the tail which isn't the source of the attack, or on the other side of the monster and still be hit. And not just for a little damage either. Without proper armor, the Plesioth's hip check could deal a ton of damage. The legend of the Plesioth and its hip check is so well known that there are tales of a man that was once hip checked out of the shower when he wasn't even playing the game.
Man, at this rate, I'm gonna need a snack to get to this last one. I'll be right back. Ah! Ow, my gallbladder! Ow!
You okay there, buddy?
I will be. Doesn't seem to be any permanent damage. But I tell ya, if this were 2013, I'd probably have gone Super Saiyan by now from all the rage. What's with that? Oh. Brutality incarnate, thy name is Rajang. If you thought taking on grotesque abominations, monsters with hides of steel and stone, and wyverns with huge mobility advantages was insane, this primate will send you over the edge with a fucking trebuchet.
The might and the ferocity has been with the Rajang ever since its first appearance in Generation 2. You know, the generation with the broken as hell hitboxes. Rajang is considered to be one of the most powerful monsters in all of Monster Hunter. In fact, a standoff between a Rajang, Deviljho, and the Basil Goose from World, it would be very likely that the Rajang would come out on top, without it even going into rage mode.
Yeah, considering how crazy the fights with those nomads can be, if the Rajang can beat the shit out of those two, you'd have to be crazy prepared just to stand a chance. For starters, with gorilla speed, it can cover a ludicrous amount of ground in a very short time, meaning putting distance between it and any gunners in your party basically comes down to the melee fighters drawing aggro to it. And getting close to it means running the risk of being pulverized by its punishing physical attacks. A word of advice, your bones will not break when you fight the Rajang. No. They shatter.
The Rajang's attacks all do considerable to high damage, and the amount of chip damage it can cause builds up really fast. To top off the physical brutality of the Rajang, it also uses an attack that has an earthquake effect to it, and if you're caught up in it, the amount of time that you have to avoid the next attack is merely a split second, because by then the Rajang will already be on top of you, and not in a sexy kind of way. And bear in mind, we're only talking about physical attacks. This bastard also has breath attacks for some godforsaken reason.
Oh yeah, that's right! The Rajang is an electric monster to boot. and it releases said thunder in its breath attacks. It has two of them. The first is a ball of electricity which comes at you fast and can cause thunder blight, which means, yup, increased chances of stun, which in a fight like this can rapidly result in a swift trip back to base in a cart. The other is its infamous Thunder Beam, which has its insane reach and even more insane damage output.
And we still haven't even gotten into the Rage mode yet. After dealing some damage to the Rajang, it will, and I shit you not, go Super Saiyan. Golden, spiky fur will stand on end and it will become an even greater beast in combat. The Rajang is in fact based off of Dragon Ball's son Goku in more ways than one. In addition to the Super Saiyan state, in Monster Hunter Frontier, the Rajang has an electric attack that's based off of Goku's Spirit Bomb attack. And cutting off a Rajang's tail is in direct reference to cutting off a Saiyan's tail and them losing their Ozaru state. With its tail cut off, the Rajang can no longer enter Rage mode, but this is only for a standard Rajang.
Oh, and it gets better, people. It fucking gets better. In G rank, it gains a new attack where it flip kicks you repeatedly, meaning more bones pummel to dust. And then there's a variant known as the Furious Rajang, which is ironic because unless you're under the roots of your teeth, the one who will be furious may well be you. If the idea of an Ozaru in permanent Super Saiyan mode doesn't make you shit yourself, then you must have nerves of steel.
And finally, the Rajang can be affected by the Apex virus in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, and it shares many traits with the Furious Rajang. In fact, both the Furious and Apex Rajang have armor modes for their arms, which takes the sharpest of weapons to get a clean hit. What else can you say about a monster that has a roar that will literally send you flying? Good fucking luck.
I'm the quarter guy.
And I'm Regnilla.
And I could really use a max potion right now after all that.
And while you do that, I'll be drinking. Because it's gonna take a lot of booze to make me forget the memories I have to relive.
Ah, hell no! You know, the middle of June is like debate season in politics. Microsoft shows off lots of exclusives that are actually also coming to PC, Sony shows off games with a lot of pretty graphics, and Nintendo, well, Nintendo just does whatever the hell it wants. And then a bunch of fanboys argue constantly over who won. And you wonder why politics in America makes me so angry. Next time, top 10 games of E3 2018. It's game time!